Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to day number 2 of the Paragon Competitive League. So glad you can be joining us today, and we are going to be casting the first semifinals going into this. I'm Shane Lynch, but who cares? Joining me is Gems, the man, the myth, and not quite yet legendary status, but we're working on it.
I guess you could say that. I guess we are working on it. How are you doing, Shane, today?
Been good, man. Looking forward to casting these games. A lot of the team names themselves are not familiar, but the individuals on the teams are familiar. So I'm very excited to see this. Yesterday, at least on our end of the world, if you will, Jim's on our stream, we saw Havoc put on an extraordinarily dominating performance with pretty much a sort of pick-oriented strategy. They would just try to force bad rotations out of their opponent and would just get one pick. They never really won a team fight, swept the floor with anyone. They would just usually get 1 or 2 picks and then go get Raptors or go get a Prime and just sort of won through almost a war of attrition at this point. But obviously, Think Twice has names like I. Cameron on it, who's one of the most widely respected carry players in all of the European and well as just pretty much all across competitive Paragon. So it's going to be interesting to see how Havoc does putting on such a performance yesterday against a team with a little bit more experience and maybe a little bit more power behind them.
Yeah, I didn't see the first couple of games on your side. On our side, we had Pulaski PL, I think. I can't remember the full name. And Synergy as well, who were playing a similar sort of strategy, but their fights were incredibly snowball heavy, as you mentioned. There was a lot of fighting in R1s. It wasn't really picks. It was just all outright. We had to kill one and then keep going and keep taking a tower and another tower. And then Raptors, then orb at 15 minutes was really common as it spawned because they were so far ahead. And now those teams have to play against each other. They're going to have to switch up their strategies, and this is going to be the first one of those as well.
It's going to be interesting, especially we didn't see Morgash at all. We didn't see Morgash at all yesterday. Obviously, that's the newest hero that is available for play. For those of you that missed yesterday's broadcast or are just joining us for the first time, first, welcome. You look really dapper today. I'm actually pretty impressed. Hair looks wonderful. So we officially have adapted the rule set that was put into the community by Epic this week. And with that rule set, it does say that Revenant will not be available for play. I know a lot of you guys are a little bit disappointed. The newest carry, the bounty hunter, sort of poltergeist-looking cowboy dude, won't be available for play. So Morgash will be, though. Interesting to see if we do see her run and how she'll be run, so on and so forth. But we'll have to see, Gems.
We did see a Morgash yesterday on our stream.
Okay.
We also saw an Iggy. We also saw an Iggy on our stream as
okay.
well in one of our games.
So, yeah, wow.
Unfortunately, didn't do as well as we hoped, but we did get to see them. Both those champions did get picked, but Morgash has not been really high on the tier list. She can sit in that off lane incredibly well, but a lot of these duos carry support lanes can just punish her and push her out of lane almost repeatedly, and that's kind of the reason you don't see her that much in competitive play.
Well, we got a draft, we got a game, we got games to cast, we got Paragon to play, Paragon to watch, and nerds to kill each other, Gems. So let's go ahead and just get right into that, my man. And again, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget, before going into this, we still have that Matcherino Online coupon code PCLEU, the number 4, and you are able to give a free $1 to the prize pool for these teams are fighting over, which, again, is just always so generous of everyone, and thank you for your support. But going into the draft, let's see what these guys decide to ban out here, Gems. It's been pretty straightforward. It's been, the typical Decker bans and, Bellica, so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's nearly always been Decker and Bellica. I think we've seen a few Grux bans tends to be up there, just denying one of the sort of main junglers of the game away from one of the two teams. That's also one of the main bans, because then you're forced to go on something that might not be as optimal in the jungle, doesn't have as great pressure like Quang, who's good at farming, but his gank pressure, if he doesn't hit that tether, is a bit lackluster.
Yeah, and obviously Grux also enables you to take Raptors with a little bit more ease. Obviously, it's still not an easy free objective, but that's always been one of his strengths as well. Howitzer being picked up here first, so think twice. Locking in the alien rabbit in the robot, if you will. And a very quick pick by Havoc, picking up Narbash. And, of course, Twin Blast, that's to be expected. Narbash with, I was saying yesterday, since the changes of Boulder on Rampage and with support Rampage pretty much being a thing of the past, is the go-to support after Decker. And not only that, but I also think teams have really started to learn how to play around his kit and actually realizing there's a little more strength behind him than what was first thought.
Yeah, Rampage is still incredibly strong as well. Narbash, as you mentioned, has come up in popularity, but Howitzer, the first pick, doesn't really give away much for their composition. It allows them to get a mid laner that is arguably one of the second best. The displacement mine capabilities are incredibly strong, and that can't be understated in this mid lane. Shinx with Howitzer is to be incredibly feared. It's not a hero you just want to give him freely in most matches.
And Think Twice picking up Sevarog Kwong, so I have to assume that this is a jungle Sevarog with potentially an offlane Kwong. We have seen support Kwong run like once ever by Master Splinter like 3 PCLs ago. It didn't really work out. They ended up like getting knocked out, I think, in that game. I feel like that's the most straightforward case here. Unless they are going to run one of these guys in a support role. I don't imagine that's going to be the case, but I know teams are really experimenting and finding success in things they were kind of not expecting to have in.
Yeah, the main reason a lot of people run things like Kwang support is the fact that they don't particularly like the Muriel. Muriel was probably Muriel Rampage are basically the last couple of champs you could pick in that role. And Muriel, while she's good in up to like level 5, when it's getting to level 11, when people have got some card points, those shields are pretty negligible in the later stages, and you're not going to really be able to protect your carry if the enemy team has gone really far ahead and doesn't really play well from behind. But I suspect this is just the standard jungle offlaner combo coming out from things.
Gadgets and the Grux. I'm very surprised that Grux has gone this deep in the draft, to be perfectly honest, but I suppose when Sevarog was picked up, then Havoc could just be like, all right, we can just ease up on our jungler, knowing that they pretty much already have theirs as well. It's not very often we see Sevarog picked over Grux here, Gems. I mean, they share similar play styles in the sense that they both have a lockdown ability and they both enable ganks very, very easily. Obviously, smash and grab with Grux, subjugate, and colossal blow with Sevarog. Sevarog, I think, just has a little bit more intrinsic tankiness as opposed to Grux, who, if he doesn't just go raw tankiness, can definitely be very easily picked off in the later stages of the game.
It's going to be interesting to see how these junglers play out. Weow himself likes to play quite passively the first couple of levels, so he'll like to farm up a little bit. Then once he hits that level 3 mark, look for a fight. At that point, once he's got the subjugate, siphon, and his dash as well, then he'll try and find a gank around that mark. So 3 minutes is where we're going to be looking, I suspect, to see the first sort of jungler action happening on the side of Think Twice.
Yep. And Think Twice is going to round themselves out with a Sparrow and a Rampage. I have to assume that's going to be a maybe that's going to be a support Rampage. You were talking about that, Jims, having a little bit more, pretty much being the go-to pick once Bellica and Decker are away for teams that don't necessarily favor Muriel. So offlane Rampage really isn't a thing. I would imagine Kwong is a little bit more viable in that situation, or even Jungle. I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that Think Twice could run this draft here, and I always am a big fan of drafts that they can conceal their laning a little bit and maybe catch their opponents off guard.
Yeah, I suspect it's going to be Kwang in the offlane. Cloud really likes to play Kwang as a hero. He also likes to play things like Morogesh. Kwang, arguably, I think, one of the strongest offlaners right now. Incredibly hard to kill in the offlane because of his abilities that give him passive armor, so he can tank up a couple of extra shots. The lifesteal as well.
For sustain, yeah.
For sustain, and he can also fight a 2v1. The second he gets to level 5 and he gets that ultimate available to him, he can actually take a 2v1 fairly well, which most other offlaners can't do.
And the Aurora is a hero we haven't seen since she was, to put it bluntly, was nerfed shortly after her release. I think the only other time that I can remember her being run was Reborn ran her. Again, it was Master Splinter in that support position. It actually was quite a great game on that end tier, but I'd imagine that she's going to be the offlaner there. I still think, at least in my personal opinion, I still think Aurora has a little bit. I still think she's a legitimate hero in a competitive sense. Obviously, maybe not as strong as the other heroes, but I think she still is able to. You can build a strategy around here and find success with it, and we're gonna have to see if that's gonna be the case with Havoc here, Gems. Overall, looking at this draft, to be honest, I'm a man of consistency, and I think Think Twice draft has a really tanky front line in both the Sevarog and the Rampage, which obviously grants the tools necessary for Sparrow to protect herself. But then on the other side of the field, Havoc doesn't really have that much dive or pick. I guess the Grux and Aurora, but it's not like they have someone like a Countess or anything like that to consistently dive in the back line. So I think Twice, as long as they play it right, have a great amount of tools to help peel iCameron off Sparrow any trouble that he gets in.
One thing to note is, unless Sparrow or Quang are getting Purity,
yes,
Rampage can't grab it.
That's true.
Aurora can potentially wreak havoc if they've got it in their decks, if they've got a deck pre-built to deal with an Aurora on those sort of heroes. That's going to be a point to look out for. We're going to have to see how it plays out, what their itemization is going to be, because that's going to be key for Think Twice here. If they can play around the Aurora Hoarfrost and survive it as well.
That is going to be very interesting. I didn't even think about that when Aurora was in her prime. That also consequently we saw Purity Sensor being run, and do you think these teams are astute enough to just be like, hey, always have a Purity Sensor just in case of that Aurora pick? But I know these teams are, they love min-maxing their decks to a point where that really won't allow maybe much flexibility. Well, so we're gonna have to see.
We have to see. The issue is who builds it, because the support can't build it currently.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like,
that's where it's issue.
It's not normal. You're off lane, or you're like, make sure you have a Purity Sensor, Kwong, like, or your jungler or anything like that. So it's gonna be interesting overall. I think these drafts both have a pretty good strength, but I want to give it to Havoc strictly looking at the draft. I think they just have a little bit more well-roundedness into their draft. But at the same time, Aurora, if she's able to get in there and get those Hoarfrost and isolate Sparrow, they could really punish that lack of mobility very, very quickly. Gems, you know what I'm doing right now?
You're sitting at 5 seconds.
Oh my God, you are so smart. Let's do this, my man. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. The draft is done with into the first semifinals. We're going to be going into between Think Twice and Havoc in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you so much for being so good looking and smart and just great, compassionate, altruistic people here. And up. Hey, Jims, how are you, my man? You're looking good. You're looking good. I am not doing anything production right now. That's not what I'm doing. And back into the game. Okay. Let's introduce these teams real quick. We see them quickly. Both of them joined by the hip here. Maybe looking for a pick-off wording already. Holding off naming the teams in case these guys take an engagement. Looks like they're going to be... Okay, Aurora spotted out, and she's going to be able to go away. Okay, on the blue team is going to be Havoc. Vision on Aurora. Merciless on Grux. Malix on Twinblast, who put on a pretty good performance yesterday. Atrovent on Narbash, and Meyer on the Gadget.
And on the side of Think Twice, we do have Weow on that Sevarog, Cloud on the Quang, Shinx on that Howitzer, Cosby substituting in from Mark II Wolves on that Rampage, and iCameron on that Sparrow.
We got a little North America representation here, man. That's gonna see if Cosby don't let us down.
He's playing a different role, but he's playing Rampage, so he's probably got a lot of practice on Rampage in the jungle as well from previous patches, and probably going to be okay sitting with that in the support lane.
So this is something we saw Havoc do yesterday, the offensive duo lane. It worked pretty well the first game. Their opponent ended up going duo mid. No one sent them the memo. And it was a single howitzer, and they really were able to punish it here. But this really isn't something that we see too much as Cosby pulls out the BM taunt. Big fan of that, my man. Little Othello going down in the field for you people lacking knowledge in Shakespeare. We'll talk about that later, though, in the after show. So this is something I've always wanted to see. The moment I saw Monolith, I was like, oh my lord, we're going to have a true sort of, because I'm a Dota guy, a true sort of offensive lane sort of situation. We haven't seen very much of it. I think it's just that the map objectives maybe aren't necessarily worth running this sort of thing at this point in time due to the nature of Raptors and so whatnot. But also maybe teams just aren't practiced with it. But in this situation, in this matchup, do you feel like this is warranted? I don't really know. I feel like we're going to have to see how the other lanes go, to be honest.
Well, the main reason Havoc want to do this 2v2 is because the power of Narbash Thunk with the grenade from Twin Blast can put a lot of damage here onto iCameron, not allow him to farm as much as he'd necessarily like. You wouldn't do it normally because you put yourself away from that Raptor side, and Maya taking a little bit of damage here in the mid lane from Shinx and already having to be pushed up.
Yeah, the good old Howitzer Gadget matchup there. You talked about you're building up hype for Shinx on the Howitzer here. Level 2, he has the R2000 rocket and the landmine already leveled up to be expected at that time, and now level 3. Right at that 3-minute mark. I like what Shinx is doing. I feel like a lot of mid laners don't do this, and that is trying to time the wave pushing in right at the 3-minute mark, so that way the opponent has to be under the tower and aren't able to navigate over to those runes as quickly as normal. Atrovent is going to get hit by a subjugate. The Cosby is swinging that big hammer, or I'm sorry, the big fist of his. It's Sevarog with the hammer. And they're going to continue to maybe potentially look for Twin Blast as well. He does have the green buff, so the green buff is actually going to get knocked by the tower. The AoE explosion from the green buff being taken out by the tower ends up in Twin Blast going down as well. So the first rotate of the game coming out from Think Twice is going to do exactly that and pick up very important kills.
Power of the red buff on Weao allowed him to just put out so much damage on that Siphon early on without having to have many card points. And you can already see he's sitting at 7 points now, 2 and 0. Manages to grab his Guardian's Ward on his first back and put a couple of upgrades into it. No one else can do the same, to be honest, and he's already level 3. It's the 3-minute mark. Once you do your rotation, I think it's green, white, 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 and then another white camp, you hit that level 3 perfectly in time for the river buff, which, as I mentioned, he likes to go for that farm start and then look for a gank at the 3-minute mark, and that's what we saw.
They continue to push forward here, and they have to respect Weao on that Sevarog there, as he just pretty much casually rotates, lands a subjugate, and gets taken out again. I feel like if you're running an offensive lane like this, you also maybe put a little bit more priority for your jungler and your mid laner to secure vision of that area, because you're going to be pushing that tower. The tower is going to be pushing, and you're going to be putting your carry and your support in very, very susceptible positions, which pretty much we just saw in the most recent engagements. And they haven't been sort of compensating for that weakness of this lane by putting more priority of retaining vision in that area, and I think that's really why they've been giving these kills up so early.
There's also the fact Merciless Killer has to sit on the other side of the map to get the majority of his farm. He's now forced to go to this off lane, and as you can see, he's going for the gank here on Vision. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get it on Cloud.
Nope.
The tankiness of Quang, as I mentioned before, means he's going to be pretty much okay, even with Bifrost and the Smash and Grab coming out.
And at the same time, a little bit of an invasion into the strong side of the jungle of Havoc is going to result in Gadget being picked up here. I'd imagine that Gadget was just caught out of position at that 5-minute mark, looking for that, looking for the river buff. I keep calling them runes. I'm sorry. I'm a Dota bias guy. I know, scumbag. And now Merciless could potentially get collapsed on as well. Fortuitously, the green buff spawn. Here comes Cloud from the offlane. He's not level 5 yet, but Sphinx is. They have the green buff. Tether misses, and they're not going to continue to go for the push. Seeing Aurora rotating over, they're going to sound the alarms of retreat, but still are going to be happy about that exchange. 2 kills, stole the green buff, and momentum is firmly in the hands of Think Twice here. They've just been setting the tone of this match since the beginning.
Yeah, as I was talking before, because of this 2v2 lane on this side of the map, Weao is on his strong side of the jungle, and he has access to two players to gank. He can take out both. And
Cameron's in trouble here. It looks like that Think Twice is in not winning this engagement. Oh, Malik's both so very low. Both of the carries of these teams. Just one missed auto attacked during that engagement results in one living, one dying. But you know, sometimes fights like that are a battle inches, and those guys are a very close engagement. That would have been great for Malix to be able to get a kill on the iCameron there and maybe get a little bit of a morale boost thus far, but not going to be the case, and they're both going to narrowly able to get away.
We're already seeing a slight point lead on the side of Think Twice. Those 4 kills they've gotten them. We've made them 10 points on 3 of the players on the team right now. It's going to be a completed item for most of them. They'll have a finished item at this point with the bonus upgrade, which is going to give them that little boost they have needed. And it looks like Atrovent might be slightly caught out as well.
Yep, Narbash is going to get taken out right there as, again, it's not like I was doing hashtag production stuff or anything like that. Just simply not a possibility whatsoever. There we go, boys. We getting that all switched up. Well, maybe not. Maybe not. Stand by. I believe my game just crashed, chat. We'll see if we can get everything going here, guys. Apologize as we go to the beautiful webcam screen once again. Oh my gosh, is that you again, Jims? It is. You're so pretty. Yeah, my game just crashed, so stand by here, guys.
Well, while you get reloaded, I'm seeing at 7:30, by the way, for when you come back in.
Okay, cool. Thank you, sir. And
but yeah, we can talk a little bit about the comps while you get yourself
please let's
reloaded back into this game.
Let's.
At the point in time, we already have a couple of point leads across the board. You can't really see it. I'm still in, but iCameron sitting at 11 points. 7 minutes into the game. These extra points are going to be crucial for the fight coming up in just about 2.5 minutes when Raptors start spawning. We're going to probably see both teams group up and try and get a big engagement, a big fight. This is when Aurora should really shine. If she can get that cryo activated on 3 or 4 members, particularly if she can get it onto iCameron.
Yes.
That could be it for the fight for them. And this sort of more early game comp coming out from Havoc could wreak a lot of havoc at that point in time.
All right, guys, loading back in. We're going to get me into 7:30 here. Oh, that's 7:31. There we go. That'll do. That will do. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Again, of course, you always got to get the disclaimer. Always got to get the disclaimer. Hashtag open beta. Hashtag open beta. We're working through it. We're working through it, guys. Thank you for your patience. And we're going to get right back into this without any further delay in 3, 2, 1. And we're back. It's always got to happen once. It's always got to happen once, especially with Notch. Notch always, his game always crashes, but that's okay. So, yeah, we're at the 7...
I've been getting it as well. It's like random little drops here and there on the game, and it's one of those things we just have to deal with as well.
It's the joy of being in games that are still early on in development, also par for the course, and it's always obviously given useful feedback to Epic, as they are always continually try to improve this game, and I've done a pretty good job thus far, if you ask me. Except for Chimera, come on. I joke. So, the thing about the support Rampage, of course, is he doesn't hit that level 5 until much later. I mean, still only level 3 at 8 minutes, which isn't too terrible. Actually, just hit level 4, so I'd say that's pretty much par for the course at this stage of the game. But his ability...
doing pretty well. He's not been roaming around, so he's just been able to just sit there and get as much XP as possible. Has been missing a couple of rocks in lane, but I think they're more of a deterrent rock, because he's forced to throw them now when he picks them up. So he's like, I picked it up, just going to have to throw it and hope.
Getting aggressive, Crosby leaping forward. We do see Weehaw and Shinx both going in. The Subjugate is about to be dodged, but he's going to have to dodge a lot more than that if this Twin Blast is going to want to live. He is able to get away, but iCameron quickly just turning the target over to the man with the drums and showing him who's got the beat, and that's going to be Narbash going down. At the same time, Sevarog was killed underneath the tower. A little bit of a miscommunication as iCameron was focusing the different target that Sevarog was essentially tanking for. Myers got to be careful about a potential overextension. He's leading the charge, but we want Merciless in that front line. Cosby's going to poke around the fog wall. Barely able to dodge a boulder is Meyer. If that hit, that more than likely would have been a kill here. And now aggressiveness, iCameron gets hit by the sticky bomb. They're looking for a kill. The Tesla Dome, iCameron's forced to get in a bad position. The smash and grab from Merciless underneath the tower is going to take down. So both carries taken down respectively here. Cosby's going to have to run away, and now Sphinx is hoping to punish this gadget for what would be considered a strong push to get Cameron, but here comes Atrovin. We're early on here, Gems. Those early respawn timers, I don't think they were expecting that at all, and he's going to throw that drumstick at him, ultimately pick up another kill. So a very tight engagement right there. Weehow again back from the grave as well, and swings the big hammer, uses the colossal blow, avenges his death when this engagement first started, Gems. And ultimately, I believe that's going to be a 3 for 3 with both carries going down at least one time in that fight.
Yeah, it was an interesting fight, to say the least. Neither team really being able to fully capitalize on it. Just each team had people slightly overextending, just a little bit too far. Shinx went a little bit too far, didn't have the mana pool to really take out anyone, and ended up getting punished a little bit for that as well. He didn't have to go for it. He could have just backed up, taken the farm in that lane, and it allows Havoc here to get a couple of kills on the board, especially around this 10-minute mark now.
Yep.
Because Raptors are up. You can already see some wards being placed here by Narbash here. Atrovin trying to get some wards in the pit of the Raptors, and they're setting up vision. They're trying to get this Raptors, and this is where the next major fight is probably going to happen.
Team Havoc already collapsing 4 out of the 5 team members, while at the same time that's being taken. Cameron and Cosby are pushing a tower. So this is early on. Those Raptors right now are doing a significant amount of damage relative to the health pools and the damage output from the other team. And I think Sphinx actually was able to get a kill onto one of the Raptors right there with the R2000 rocket. Forced to pop the Make It Rain, but unfortunately wasn't able to get himself into a good situation. Drops right down, and he's going to get cut down by Merciless. Here comes Weehouse. Subjugate is going to land on a Merciless killer. Twin Blast is still alive and popping off. Looks like there was a Quenching Squirrels pop, but here comes iCamera from the other side of the lane as they were able to switch over here just as that team fight was about to break down and try to swing the momentum into their hands. Cosby gets taken out as well, though. Ultimately, the steal from, the purple buff spotted out Meyer trying to back, and the lazy back, ladies and gentlemen. We have all done it at least once, some of us more than that. And they're going to find a gadget free for the killing, so... Yeah, Sphinx was able to steal that Raptor from Twin Blast with the R2000 rocket. He went down for it, but his team came in and took a favorable engagement off the heels of it. Yeah,
he was more of a stall right there. He was just stalling so that the duo of Cameron and Cosby could just rotate from that lane. They did come a little bit late, so the Raptors did fall down. They didn't catch who grabbed which Raptor, but looking at it, Shinx is sitting at 17 points. But Malix is all the way up at 16, which he wasn't before, so I suspect he's managed to grab at least one or two of those Raptors to sort of negate the early game deficit they've managed to build themselves here in.
And if you can't get Raptors, the next best thing is killing nerds, and that's what Cameron has gotten 3 of thus far here, Jims, as even with that, he does find himself at a full 3-card level lead at this stage of the game. And let's see if Malix is able to pick that back up. As far as the CS goes, there's a slight lead over to Think Twice, about 40 at this point, which actually, given it being only 12.5 minutes, I would say that's more than a slight lead in the CS department. And iCameron just showing why he's just so widely respected. Not only is he 3-1-3, but at the same time still maintaining the very high level amount of CS, given the amount of harassment that has gone down in the aggressive duo lane that came out from Havoc early on.
Yeah, he just grabs that gold buff as well, just for the little bit extra to get him 20 points. He's now got 3 completed items with the little strike token. Wind cover blade build, so that piercing arrow is going to hurt a heap of damage. That's kind of what you take Sparrow for, is that right click. You just poke through waves, and you can chunk people out for about 200-300 damage. And Mercer's Killer trying to go for a fight here, and we are.
Sphinx does have the Shadow Plane buff. They know about it, as that's what they were contending for, trying to pick that up. Both of them are going to decide to disengage. Not really aware, and especially in that area in the river where the strong side you can get collapsed on very, very easily from either the lane or the strong side of the jungle. Mercil's going to fall back, pick up his green buff, I feel like, for the first time since the first part of the match here, as we have seen. Think Twice is doing a good job of just making calculated invasions thus far, but more so just calculated rotations. They weren't able to pick up that tier 1 tower in the off lane, but I think during that Raptor engagement, but that's just because they realized the Raptors are a much more higher priority objective at that point in time, and they just gave it up to take a favorable engagement, as we just mentioned there. Talking about the build on Howitzer here, that is not Ramril's plane. That is actually Sir Shinx going with, like, they call the Ramril's build. The 2 Adamant Edges, as well as the Sage's Ward. That extra 150 health that you get from those cards early on, I think is a lot more significant than what most people realize.
We are seeing a tower dive here on Cloud, but he does recognize it, does just back out, which means that Havoc aren't able actually to capitalize here as much as they would have liked, and they end up losing their other tier 1 on the other side of the map, because Cosby and Cameron, the second they saw that Grux put on the pressure in that lane, and it gets them that extra tower, it gets them a nice push here, and we see a fight in mid lane as well at the same time.
Astrovert has level 5. He's able to use that if he wants to find someone and isolate them out. As far as abilities to interrupt that, pretty much is going to come down to the Landmine from Howitzer, the Boulder from Cosby, and the Colossal Blow from Sevarog. So plenty of tools at their disposal to deal with the base drop of Narbash. Other than that, they really don't have to focus on interrupting too many things coming out here. If they're really good, you can interrupt the ultimate on Aurora, but that's pretty difficult to do. Cloud getting chased down by Merciless Killer right now. The blue buff on Malix giving him the speed boost, but they're not going to pursue into that. I think a good call, as Raptors once again has spawned here, Gems, and imagine we're going to see a collapse from both teams. Aurora a little bit out of position, forced to be out of position, though, because that wave was set and pushed out. So this is already somewhat of a favorable engagement, at least for the time being, for Think Twice.
Yeah, they do have Weow with the purple buff. I suppose he's not really going to use it. They are behind in points, so it's up to Havoc to re-engage after they started Raptors, but Raptors would fall down in a matter of seconds.
We hear Cosby going into that enraged form. Anytime you hear that, you want to see an engagement. He's not going to be able to use that boulder. They're able to tuck themselves line of sight around the corner. But still, they didn't take the fight, but they were able to pick up all 3 Raptors there, which is the much more higher priority. Cameron, who was already in a card experience lead, now at 27 to Malix's 7. We're starting to get, that's the power of the Raptors, and that's the reason why we see those clockwork rotations, because if you're able to take control of those Raptors, it's just an economic lead that can turn ultimately into an autopilot win. With that being said, of course, don't forget, Cameron is on the little more later, the little more hard carry than that compared to Twin Blast. So normally you want to see Twin Blast have a little bit more mid-game impact than a Sparrow, but really it's been the other way around this game.
Yes, Cameron hasn't really been pressured enough this game. He did die that one time under the tower, but he's been pretty much given free reign to farm all game. He's sitting about 30 creeps ahead here across the board, 20 to 30 creeps, and that is going to be a huge issue for them to deal with. Havoc have to find a way to pick out that Sparrow. It's going to have to be vigilant on that Aurora, hitting that Cryo on Sparrow, but there are ways Sparrow can avoid that. If he can grab the Hunter's Gill and try and survive and try to cleanse the CC from him, to just be able to then blink away afterwards.
That was the go-to build when Sparrow was at the peak of piercing arrow damage, and also Aurora just came out and was before she got nerfed. That is like, if you're playing Sparrow, you pretty much get a Hunter's Guile. But it looks like that's going to be, not sure if that's even in the deck anymore just because of how Aurora has fallen off. But nonetheless, Cameron has done a good job at avoiding that. But I also think at the same time, the impact from Vision has been a little bit substandard. I haven't really felt his impact in this game this far, especially in the engagements around Raptors when people are clumped up.
Yeah, and we're just seeing Adjuvant falling down here. Slightly out of position. Mester's going to trying to go for a fight.
Cosby's underneath the tower. He is going to be able to jump away. A little bit of an act of confidence, really understanding the health regen on the hero. He was sitting there till the very last minute until he had to leap away. But yeah, they pretty much just caught out the Narbash and collapsed on him at this point.
Yeah, he had to pop that quenching just to survive. I don't think if he'd used that, he would have probably been dead.
Weehow's in trouble. The sticky bomb is going to be the demise. There's no quenching scales. There's no Honor the Pure, anything to keep him alive. They were able to pick up the Tier 1 tower, though, as he was much of a distraction. So, the Sevarog for a Tier 1 tower, not the worst trades in the world, opening up more map control when you already pretty much have map control, as all the Tier 1 towers, including the off lane, are still online. I think that may be one of the weaknesses, one of the weaknesses of that offensive duo lane is obviously you give up the more safe push and form of map control and getting that off-lane tower. So no semblance of map control whatsoever from Havoc. And that's very important, as not only have they not been able to contend the Raptors, but they are on the Dawn side, and the Dusk side always has that inherent geographical advantage due to the nature of the map. So those two factors alone, they really got to step themselves up here the next couple minutes, I feel, Gems, or iCamera's just going to turn into a raid boss.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it is 19 minutes into the game. Prime is up as well. So it's one of those things we need to take into consideration, that either of these teams can take Prime fairly quickly. In that last fight as well, Weehow just missed that colossal blow when he was going behind the tower. It was a messy Tier 1 that was taken. I don't think he necessarily needed to do that. I think they could have just gone from the front and taken it cleanly without a death happening. But on the other hand, they still get it. They're still in the lead. And again, we're getting to that point where Raptors are about to respawn. River buffs just came up 30 seconds ago, so they're going to probably be running out as well now. So it's going to see who can take advantage of those timers.
Havoc is collapsing around the Raptors, but actually has now forced a two-man rotation. Not sure if they're aware of Cosby preemptively in position to cut off any sort of rotation, at least from the weak side of the jungle. That's going to be Cameron running away here. So a little bit of a divide strategy here, and both of these teams at this time are not going to want to favor to take those Raptors. Especially considering Think Twice doesn't have their carry, as opposed to Malix is still hanging around there, so they still have their range damage in the field. I'm surprised that Havoc didn't force the issue a little bit more there, knowing that the carry wasn't going to be in the engagement. Aurora was there, and they were clumped up, but ultimately, I think they were just a little bit too scared about that Tier 2 tower going down and opening up an inhibitor. And both the teams falling back, and here we go. Here's the engagement. Once again, 20-minute mark, and they're just going to start this immediately. And this could be risky. There's a subjugate onto 2. Very well done. Vision's going in, and he is able to get the cryo into iCameron. He's isolated. The Tesla Dome is going to try to do what he can. iCameron is able to blink away and is barely alive right now. Does get taken out by Meyer, but they had to push so far in and put so many resources into taking down the Sparrow that I'm not sure they're going to be able to recover after this, as the rest of the team is still alive while Malix himself was taken out. Cloud is trying to swing that sword of his merciless killer. Does charge away, but Sphinx is going to shoot him with that big rocket robot. And oh, baby, a triple. That's 4 kills right there. That's just, they were able to get iCameron gems, but the amount of resources they had to put into doing it meant they were completely out of gas after the fact, and they pretty much just had nothing left, and forced themselves in a bad position as well.
I completely agree that you could see iCameron, even though they dived onto him, was able to get away from Aurora and still put out a couple of extra shots and a piercing shot. And even though he did fall, because he secured the Raptors, because he managed to survive a little bit longer than he probably should have been able to survive, meant he could put out that extra damage and allow his team to then come in and sweep up fairly easily. It was a straight 4, I think, was it a 3-for-1 or 4-for-1? 4-for-1.
4-for-1, yeah. It was Cameron for everyone. I believe the only person who got away was the I believe I'm not sure. No, I think it was a 5.
See the
card
point lead.
Yeah.
And look at Hunter's Guild is already up, as we were talking about.
There it is. Yep.
Now it's going to be even harder for iCameron to be taken out here by this Vision. Vision's going to have to really time it well. Potentially maybe look for a Narvash dunk onto Sparrow beforehand to force spell to come out, and I don't know, it's going to be tricky for him to deal with.
It is, because he's going to have to commit one of his 2 mobility abilities in order to get himself into position to do it. He doesn't have anything like Teleblink or anything like that. We see a 1v1 engagement quickly collapse into a 3v4, but Gadget was already caught out and was underneath that Make It Rain, and that last barrage is pretty much a act of physics with Fusion right there. And he's going to get taken out. We're now at the stage of the game gems where death timers are exceeding that of 30 seconds, and when you hit this stage, pickoffs and staggered deaths can cost you so much in terms of objectives.
Yeah, it can. I'm surprised they haven't really tried to push any other objective, like Prime, even though they managed to pick out the Gadget is probably the best at trying to steal it. But not too much of an issue for them. They are just going to go back to farming. They have enough of a lead that they don't have to force every single fight.
Very impressed with Weow thus far. A name I'm not familiar with. And he has been playing a great Sevirog. The Subjugates are always playing. We actually saw a 2-man Subjugate in that most recent fight, which really was a isolated Aurora. Even though they found iCameron, both the Narbash and the Twin Blast were stuck standing in that Subjugate, and they weren't able to take down iCameron that quickly because of it. Cosby's zoning out for the Orb Prime, and as you mentioned, Jims, it's like they heard you or something, and they are going to go for the Orb Prime. It is activated. Cosby's under the Hoardfrost right now, but at this point, he's just pretty much tanking for his team, while the Merciless gets completely wrecked right there by the rest of them. This very heavy frontline-oriented draft. When you're a Gruxed against that, you got to be very, very careful. Aggressive blink forward by Sphinx right there to try to catch out Malix, but actually knocks him away. Onto the Pure and Quenching skills both popped right now, so 45 seconds without those, even if Atropine does live. And this is going to be a very threatening push here. There goes the R2000 rocket and the Piercing Arrow. Such long-range shingle target burst damage between the Howitzer and the Sparrow. On top of the CC available here. Really a very dominating performance thus far from Think Twice, and they're more than likely to go for the nail in the coffin right here, as I don't see anything stopping them at this point in time.
With that regen, with the sort of combination from like iCameron and Shinx.
There was a Narbash there!
There was one, not anymore, and this is probably just going to be a game. They're probably going to go for this core straight away in our first best of 3. I really don't think Havoc have any strong way of defending this.
Of course, stylistically, you got to go for the kills at this stage of the game. And that's what's going to happen. Merciless is going to be able to survive. The core is not going to be able to survive. They are, so yeah. Game number 1 from Think Twice just wasn't the most flashy play in the world by any means here, Gems. But just very consistent, well thought out play, very strategic, and very well executed.
Yeah, incredibly consistent. You could see a couple of mistakes from both sides coming out, kind of decided the game. The Raptor fight specifically, they weren't able to fully capitalize on them, Havoc. Always overextended just a little bit too much. They managed to get 1 pick, but used a lot of resources, and that ended up punishing them quite a lot because they were so focused on iCameron that Shinx was able to just completely and consistently put out R2000 rockets, make it rain, and completely annihilate Havoc's team line, front line and back line, and they couldn't make anything out of it. That was it. That was the end of the game for them at that point.
Well, guys, That's going to be game number 1. We're going to take a small break and get into game number 2. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back see if Havoc can keep themselves in the running to get themselves into the final, or if Think Twice are going to get themselves into the finals of PCL EU number 4. Stay tuned, and we'll see you in just a minute.